Good afternoon. Welcome to the 2018 Annual Awards Ceremony. I'm Master of Ceremony Todd Brewer, and if you would please rise for the presentation of colors by the Springfield Police Department Honor Guard.
Please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the singing of the Star-Spangled Banner by Eddie Maddox. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Eddie Maddox will now sing the Star-Spangled Banner.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's great glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave over the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Please be seated.
Well, again, welcome on this momentous occasion, and I'm very honored to be your MC this afternoon. And I was told that we're looking for somebody very handsome and funny, and that could speak very well. And I'm like, Chief, I'm so honored. And he's like, well, the mayor and myself have a different part in the program, so you're our last choice. So Yeah, dad jokes are not working this afternoon. Wonderful. All right. Well, a little bit about myself. I'm a retired police officer. I retired last year after 25 years. And a little bit about my story in law enforcement. And I'm a Springfield Police Department chaplain, and why chaplaincy is so dear to my heart and why the law enforcement community is also very dear to my heart. A little bit backing up on my story, when I started law enforcement, my mom had passed, and going through a lot of difficulties and problems there, and getting into law enforcement and seeing probably the worst of the worst, and trying to understand of why officers would go run in, why people go running out, and really trying to deal with some of that and the darkness of the job and things that officers have to do. And I just want to kind of caveat or put a note in a couple of things, is reality and then someone. And the reality of it was that as my life was falling apart, I was preparing for a divorce and recognizing that there was really no place to turn to, except there was this one man, when I was up at the Rockford Police Department, one man, a police chaplain, that never gave up on me, that would ride along with me, that would support me, that would talk to me, that would sometimes buy me lunch or dinner when I was on the street. And so because of that, years later, that he helped me and my marriage to deal with these things that I've seen over the years of being a police officer, and realizing that he was able to finally understand my reality. And then my realization is that I needed someone stronger than myself. When I couldn't trust myself, when I needed somebody that was a stronger swimmer than me, that someone was a chaplain. So years later, going into the ministry, I was in the ministry at the same time as being a police officer, and my friends called me the pistol packing preacher. And having a love for law enforcement, really understanding wanting to help, that it is a profession where officers, they don't seek attention. The officers don't seek notability and to be in front of the cameras and the limelight. That's not their most important thing. The most important thing is that they would do their job and they would go into things and to help the community. I finish and close with this as far as my introduction. Again, it is my distinct honor to be in front of you as we celebrate and honor those that will come before us and the stories that we're going to hear. And so the reason why I love the chaplaincy, the reason why that those in front of us that will shortly be celebrated, is because they're folks that understand reality, and there are folks that want to be that someone, just like the chaplain was for me years ago. And I just want to take this moment. Could the Springfield Police Department's chaplains please stand? Dave Johnson, Father Wills, and William Rosser could not be here with us, but can we just honor these chaplains and just thank them for being someone? Thank you very much. Next, I would like to introduce the Executive Awards Committee. The Assistant Special Agent in Charge, FBI, Mr. Timothy Ferguson. Sangamon County Captain, Mr. Rodney Vos. Supervisory Deputy of the United States Marshal, Mr. Brennan Hefner, who is represented by Justin Hamrick. Illinois State Police Chief of Staff, Felix Canizares. Retired Sergeant from the Springfield Police Department, Mr. Joseph Pisarik. and Associate Professor of Lincoln Land Community College, Mrs. Tara Walk. At this time, I would like to present and introduce our city officials. Mayor Jim Langfelder. Chief of Police Kenny Winslow. Springfield PB&PA Unit Number 5, Vice President Tim Ely. City Treasurer Misty Busher. Alderman Chuck Redpath. And Alderman Joe Minaman. I'd like to have Pastor and Chaplain Dave Johnson please come to the podium for our invocation.
Thank you so much for what you do. It's an honor to serve with you, and I appreciate the sacrifices you make for us. And as Todd said, we are here to support you in any way possible, and I'd like to do that by getting with a word of prayer, so if you would bow with me, please. Our Father in God, thank you for men and women who put other lives before their own, who make great sacrifices, who give without reservation. Father, we are thankful for those that are family, that are at home and to sacrifice. Father, we pray today that as your word says, we give honor to whom honor is due. That God, there could be a blessing added by you, not just with your presence here, but in the lives of each and every person. So God, we thank you today. We ask you for protection, guidance, and that your love would continue to fill not just this place and these people, but this community in which we live. Father, we thank you, and we ask your name. We ask this blessing in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. If I could invite to the podium Chief Winslow for the welcome message. Chief Winslow.
Thank you, Todd. Are we on? All right. I'd like to welcome everyone and thank you for your attendance today at this special event. It is with pride, honor, and humility that I stand before you today to recognize some of the hard work of the men and women of the Springfield Police Department who went above and beyond in calendar year 2018. Each May, during National Police Week, we take time to recognize our officers and employees for their efforts the previous year. These officers and employees show dedication to our community, to our profession, by representing the department and themselves in a positive light through their actions and efforts. A job well done is not for recognition. It's work ethic, it's service, pride, dedication. As we honor these officers, it would be a disservice not to recognize the quality work that occurs every day on every shift. Oftentimes, the difference between the award winners and the nominees is the slimmest of margins. These are difficult decisions, and I thank the Executive Awards Committee and the Internal Awards Committee for their time and effort on this difficult task. As we recognize these officers today, let us not forget our 163 brothers and sisters from around the country who made the ultimate sacrifice in 2018. Every time an officer reports for duty, they know that there is a chance they may not return home to their family. The inherent danger of the profession is an everyday reality for those who wear the badge. We do not have to look any further than right here in Illinois, where already 4 officers have made the ultimate sacrifice in 2019, including Deputy Jacob Keltner, whose life was tragically cut short by a career criminal from our hometown. Due to individuals and incidents like this, we will continue to work with our community, our law enforcement partners, our prosecutors, and the judiciary to remove violent offenders from our community. As officers, we see the sin and the evil in society on a daily basis. We witness what no one should have to see. We deal with people at their worst during crisis, knowing we can't make everything all right or make everyone happy. But what we can do is be fair, impartial, and do our best to bring about some type of positive resolution. We can listen. We can offer help, solutions, advice. We can't fix all that is broken, and that's okay as long as we give our best effort. We also see the best in people. When people do the unthinkable, when strangers become friends, who offer help and all they have to those who are suffering in a time of need. When the Lord works through them, through you, to bring about peace and comfort. We do this job, live this life, not because we have to, but because we choose to. It's in our DNA to help those in need. In fact, I believe it is a calling from above. Matthew chapter 5, verse 9 states, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God." It takes a special person to be a police officer, one who is intelligent, can communicate, is adaptable, can make sound decisions under pressure, exercise extreme patience while showing humility and respect for others, knowing that his or her actions are being recorded and will be scrutinized after the fact. We expect officers to be role models, relationship counselors, mental health professionals, problem solvers, crime fighters, legal advisors, and the list goes on and on. They must provide emergency medical treatment and make life or death decisions under extreme pressure in split seconds. And through it all, we expect them to be above reproach while being human. You talk about being held to a higher standard. There is no higher standard. But you know what? We get it right the vast majority of the time. You see, professional service is our personal commitment. It's not just our vision statement or words on a wall. It's how we carry ourselves and represent our department, our community, and our profession on a daily basis. In these challenging times, it is becoming a difficult task to find those with the courage, the strength, the moral compass, and the strong desire to serve to step up. Police officers are a special breed, one that runs toward danger and evil, ones who go when others run away. They are selfless, giving individuals who don't ask for much, but ones who are willing to make the ultimate sacrifice if called upon. Yes, they are special. They are everyday, real-life heroes. They are our neighbors, our family, our friends, and I'm proud to know them and honored to serve with them. Finally, I would like to thank all the men and women of the Springfield Police Department for their service, pride, and dedication, as well as the community and the mayor for their continued support of our mission. Thank you.
For the memorial tribute, could I have Sergeant Jerry Castles please come to the podium?
You may have noticed a small table at the front of the room in a place of honor. It is set for one. The table is our way of symbolizing members of our profession are missing from our midst. They are unable to be with us this afternoon, and so we remember them. 4 Illinois law enforcement officers were killed in the line of duty last year. Officer Eduardo Marmolejo, Officer Conrad Gary, Officer Samuel Jimenez, Commander Paul Bauer, all from the Chicago Police Department. Additionally, the Springfield Police Department lost 4 of its retired members: Deputy Chief Ernest Dotson, Detective Glenn Wessel, Officer Robert L. Williamson, Assistant Chief Paul Harmon. The table set for one is small, symbolizing the frailty of the officer against an oppressor. The tablecloth is white. There is a single red rose, a Bible, a slice of lemon, salt, an inverted glass, an empty chair. The white tablecloth symbolizes the purity of their intentions to respond to the call to preserve law and order. The single red rose displayed in a vase is to remind us of the families and loved ones left behind. The Bible reminds us we are one nation under God. The lemon slice and salt on the bread plate is to remind us of their bitter fate. The glass is inverted because they cannot drink with us today. The chair is empty, depicting not one officer, but all we have lost. Let us pause now to remember all of our brothers and sisters who have passed away or fallen in the line of duty, and let us never, never forget.
Well, we'll continue with today's ceremony, and I would like to invite to the podium Mayor Jim Langfelter for his remarks of reading the proclamation proclaiming Police Week. Mr. Mayor.
Well, thank you very much. I'm used to shouting a little bit. Thank you for being here. It's a very important occasion, not only for today to recognize our men and women in blue and in law enforcement, but we should do that each and every day out of the year. And for me, it brings back great memories because the previous police chiefs, I was kidding Chief Davis, when my dad was in office, he was one of his appointees. And I'd just like Chief Davis, Chief Walton, Chief Robinson, if you please stand and be recognized, and Sheriff Neil Williamson, we really appreciate your service and for being here. So thank you, and like I said, I think the chief had said it best when he talked about the sacrifices you make to keep us all safe. You know, we enjoy each and every day not thinking twice about going to work or going to a ball game or having fun, but you're called in sometimes harm's way, and so we cannot thank our men and women of our police force. I put Springfield above everybody else. We appreciate your family support, and even though we may not always agree, there are 2 things that we do agree upon. And one is to best serve the public as much as possible, give you the equipment and the technology that you need to do the job right and to its fullest potential. And then most importantly, our love for law enforcement. It's near and dear to my heart. I've said it numerous times. It's my favorite department, and we'll do whatever we can to help you provide the public safety and keep yourselves safe in the process. So at this time, I'd like to call Tim Ely to come forward with Chief Winslow, if you would, please. And while they're coming up, one thing just for myself, and Chief Winslow's done a great job with the officers in really public engagement. People talk about community policing, I talk about Springfield policing, because we do things not the traditional way. You know, a lot of things we do traditional way, but we want to customize how we handle law enforcement our own way. So we want to be the leaders for others to follow. And I think Chief Winslow, the command staff, and each and every officer has exemplified that through the years, through those challenging times that we faced together. So that's what it's all about. How can we work together to make our community better? And the proclamation reads, whereas today we gather to honor and thank the dedicated men and women of the Springfield Police Department who work tirelessly every day to protect our citizens, keep our neighborhoods safe, and enforce our laws. And whereas we can never fully repay each officer for their service, but we must work together to ensure our officers are equipped with the equipment, training, and technology needed to do their job. And whereas the Springfield Police report for duty, knowing full well the dangers they face and the sacrifices they may be called upon to make, And today we pay tribute to the men and women who serve us with extraordinary bravery. And whereas we also take this time to remember the heroes who have laid down their lives in pursuit of a safer and more just society. And whereas we owe a profound debt to all those who have worn the badge, and to the families whose support enables them to serve with courage and pride. And whereas during Police Week, which also includes Peace Officers Memorial Day, we remember the selflessness of our law enforcement officers and their families, and we honor all those who devote their lives to create a stronger and safer Springfield. Now, therefore, I, James O. Langfelder, Mayor of the City of Springfield and the City Council, do hereby proclaim that May 12th through May 18th, 2019 shall be Springfield, Illinois Police Week in the City of Springfield, and call upon all our citizens to recognize the work of our officers who have made and continue to make our community safe. Thank you for all your great work. Thank you, Chief.
I'd like to introduce Chief Winslow for the awards presentation. Chief.
Well, the mayor kind of stole my thunder, so at this time, I would ask that all former and past winners of the William Herndon, Porter Williams, Silver Suarez, and Abraham Lincoln Awards, both retired and active personnel, to please stand to be recognized. At this time, we will call you up individually. We would ask that everybody enter from the left over here, and then make your way through, stop, take a couple quick pictures, and then go on back down. So it's up to you now.
Thank you, Chief. Our first presentation will be certificates of appreciation recognizing the following citizens for their acts of bravery, courage, and support to the department. On September 23, 2018, Springfield police officers responded to Shaner's Towing to investigate the report of a subject peering into vehicles on the lot. Officer Molahan arrived on scene and located the suspect thief in a neighboring gas station parking lot. The preliminary investigation revealed that the suspect had also stolen cigarettes from the gas station. As Officer Molahan attempted to arrest the suspect, he resisted, throwing Officer Molahan to the pavement, causing him to strike his head. After a brief foot chase, Officer Molahan caught up to the suspect and a fight ensued. Officer Molahan was punched by the suspect. He then attempted to use his OC spray, however, it was ineffective. Seeing this altercation take place, two citizens, Patrick Dempsey and Stanley White, decided to step in and assist Officer Molahan. While the fight was ongoing, Mr. Dempsey grabbed a hold of the suspect as Mr. White assisted in his apprehension. Eventually, several more officers arrived on scene, and the suspect was arrested. Officer Molahan received bruising and several abrasions as a result of this encounter. Had it not been for the brave efforts of both Mr. Dempsey and Mr. White, who did not think twice about coming to the aid of Officer Molahan, it is likely his injuries would have been worse. Will Mr. Dempsey and Mr. White please come forward to receive your certification of appreciation? Mr. White? Mr. Dempsey could not be with us to get his certification, his certificate. Memo to me, the MC must step out of the way and not photobomb your picture, so Mr. White, if we need to do that again, I apologize. In the early morning hours of September 25th, 2018, Springfield police officers responded to Lake Springfield for a report of a 25-year-old female who had suddenly disappeared from the water's surface after swimming. With the assistance of numerous first responders, a massive search began. Approximately 90 minutes after rescue personnel first arrived on scene, Springfield Police Dispatch received a phone call from Michael Petrowski, a resident of a lake property home. Mr. Petrowski said he was awakened to the cries of a female voice that appeared to be coming from the lake. Mr. Petrowski instinctively retrieved his boat, entered the water, and began to follow the cries for help. Eventually, a female was located in the middle of the lake. As Mr. Petrowski made his way to her, it appeared that she was giving up on her efforts to survive. But Mr. Petrowski, he was able to grab the female, pull her into the boat, and immediately deliver her to awaiting paramedics. The female was breathing, but unresponsive. She was transported to the hospital and eventually made full recovery. Had it not been for the instinctive and immediate response on behalf of Mr. Petrowski, this outcome could not have been significantly different. Will Mr. Petrowski please come forward to receive your certificate of appreciation? Mr. Petrowski. This is kind of ironic on this next award. I met this gentleman actually at my house, and I said, "Man, you look so familiar." And we were trying to exchange stories of how I knew he looked so familiar. And so he pulls out his phone and shows me the news brief that he was on. Let me read the story to you. On November 14, 2018, a male suspect entered the Dairy Queen restaurant in an attempt to rob the business. The suspect approached the counter, struck a worker in the face, and proceeded to jump over the counter and punch another employee. During the entire incident, the suspect implied that he was armed with a handgun. As the suspect attempted to open one of the cash drawer registers, a Good Samaritan, Greg Mashkadelli, who was at a nearby gas station, was alerted to the robbery in progress. Greg then ran into the business to confront the would-be robber. Without saying a word, Mashkadelli approached the suspect and punched him one time in the face, rendering him incapacitated. Wait till you shake his hand. Anyhow, Mashkadelli then stood by until police arrived on scene. Mashkadelli elected to place himself directly in the middle of his robbery attempt in an effort not to only bring an end to the crime, but also protect the patrons of the business from additional harm. Although the actions of Mashkadelli are not encouraged by the Springfield Police Department, it was ultimately his bravery that resulted in the peaceful resolution of this robbery attempt. Will Greg Mashkadelli please come forward to receive your certificate of appreciation? Greg. The next presentation will be the Chief's Unit Citation Award to members of a unit who demonstrate a high degree of teamwork, professionalism, which results in the attainment of department goals, thus increasing the department's effectiveness and efficiency. Over the last few years, the Springfield Police Academy has experienced numerous changes, from an increased number of state mandates, additional in-service training, community requests, and outreach events and efforts, to major building improvement projects. The Academy staff has met each challenge straight on, accepting responsibility for the completion of every task presented to them. Annually, the state of Illinois imposes new requirements on every law enforcement agency, and oftentimes these mandates come with little or no advance warning. Specifically, the Academy staff must identify these new laws and these mandates to develop a curriculum for each topic and certify an instructor, in addition to completing these trainings department-wide within the specified time frame that they've been given. In-service training has also increased to 5 sessions annually. Again, it is a responsibility to the Academy staff to schedule 250 officers for these 5 sessions of training along with the curriculum. Scheduling instructors, ensuring that there is training space to meet those needs of the course. Also, to combine with these numerous roll call training bulletins, as well as multiple other classes being hosted at the Springfield Police Academy. And one can begin to understand the workload thrust upon the Academy staff. As well, the Academy is responsible for department outreach programs that provide many educational opportunities, including the Junior Police Academy, Teen Police Academy, and the Citizens Police Academy. The Springfield Police Academy annually hosts well over 100 attendees for these programs that offer just a brief glimpse into the day-to-day operations of law enforcement. One of the most crucial training opportunities conducted by the Academy staff involves annual threat assessments at every school, both public and also private, in Springfield, as well as various businesses and also churches. Annually, the Academy staff conducts well over 100 assessments citywide. It is obvious that those assigned to the Springfield Police Department Academy have their hands full, but they also have the opportunity to drive this department and community forward, but ensuring that the officers of the Springfield Police Department are first rate in their training and professional development. Throughout the calendar year of 2018, the Springfield Police Academy saw a changing of the guard as Sergeant Davidsmeyer was promoted to lieutenant, and Sergeant Bale was assigned to training as the training coordinator. As well, Officer Stout completed his 5-year assignment as the Academy training officer, and Officer Golden took the reins. During the year, the one constant who makes sure that the Academy is to run smoothly is Ryan Miller. His hard work and dedication to his craft is evident by simply walking through the Academy's front doors. At this time, will the following please come forward to receive their Chief's Unit citation? Lieutenant Bob Davidsmeyer, Sergeant Joe Beal, you are carrying a gun and I am not. Officer Brandon Golden, Officer Chris Stout, and Ryan Miller. Can you please come forward? The next presentation will be certificates of commendation recognizing the following Springfield Police Department officers for their dedication and commitment to the community. On January 2018, a teenage female was brought to the Springfield Police Department by her parents. The teenager reported that an adult male had contacted her on a social media app and ultimately invited her to his apartment, where he convinced her to engage in sexual intercourse. The suspect then continued to seek out the victim on social media and began sending inappropriate messages in an effort to lure her into future meetings as she began to attempt to resist his efforts. A report was completed and Detective Jen Oglesby was assigned to investigate the allegations. One of her first attempts consisted of drafting several social media search warrants in an effort to develop additional information. It was found out that the suspect male had engaged in similar acts in the past at other locations. The investigation culminated into a cooperative effort with the Department of Homeland Security, Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, and a federal agent who posed as a teenage victim online. A line of communication was reestablished with the suspect through social media, and once again, the suspect attempted to lure the victim to engage in further sexual acts. As a result of this communication, a special detail was set up, and investigators were able to convince the male suspect he would be meeting with the teenage victim. The suspect was directed to a pre-planned location where he was placed under arrest for aggravated criminal sexual abuse, indecent solicitation of a child, solicitation to meet a child, and sexual exploitation of a child. The suspect was brought to the station where he made statements to Detective Oglesby regarding his contact with the teenage victim. Detective Oglesby's hard work, persistence, and willingness to explore additional investigative methods led to making an arrest of a subject who continued to target vulnerable juveniles. Thanks to her tireless efforts, a dangerous suspect who was preying on young women will not be able to harm any further victims. Will Detective Jen Oglesby please come forward to receive your certificate of condemnation? At the beginning of the shift on October 17, 2018, Officer Tim Zock, along with watch officers, were briefed regarding a recent shots fired incident. Additional details were disclosed, including the name of the victim. As the evening progressed, Officer Zock was on patrol and made a traffic stop on a vehicle for a traffic infraction. It happened that the passenger of the vehicle was also the victim of the earlier shots fired incident. Officer Zock was also aware of his individual's affiliation to a local street gang, and the fact that these shots fired incidents often led to retaliation. Officer Zock removed this individual from the car while other officers on scene continued to investigate and continued the investigation of the driver. Following the driver's consent to search, officers located a handgun with a 30-round magazine hidden under the passenger seat of the vehicle. A subsequent interview of the passenger revealed that this handgun belonged to him, was likely to be used in a retaliatory shooting later in the evening. As a result of Officer Zock's recognition of the passenger from previous intelligence, along with his knowledge of the passenger's suspected gang crime activity, a potential shooting was averted, and a dangerous firearm was removed from the city streets. Will Officer Tim Zock please come forward to receive your certificate of commendation? Next, on May 18, 2018, around 1:30 in the afternoon, multiple officers responded to an armed robbery in progress at a local cell phone store. First arriving officers obtained information that one of the stolen phones was been tracked via GPS. Officer Don Rose was in the area. The phone that was being pinged was pinging and was able to locate the suspect vehicle. He attempted to make a traffic stop, but the driver fled. Officer Robbins pursued the vehicle into a nearby residential area where the suspect jumped from the moving vehicle and fled on foot. Officer Robbins gave chase and quickly arrested one suspect in the backyard. Lieutenant Chris Russell pursued the second suspect as he fled from the vehicle. A witness directed Lieutenant Russell to a residence where the suspect had entered. Lieutenant Russell, along with several other officers, entered this residence and located the suspect, who was pretending to be asleep in the bedroom. Additional officers on scene searched the suspect vehicle, locating 2 firearms that were inside. Thanks to the actions of both Officer Rummins and Lieutenant Russell, 2 dangerous suspects were apprehended and 2 firearms were recovered, along with several other stolen items. The swift response of all officers involved ultimately led to the apprehension. Will Officer Don Rummins and Lieutenant Chris Russell, could you please come forward and receive your certificate of commendation? In the early morning hours of May 14, 2018, Officer Eric Copeland was on patrol in the 2300 block of East Pine. Officer Copeland observed a vehicle in the same block applying its brakes. And shortly after, Officer Copeland passed through the same intersection when he heard the sound of gunshots. Officer Copeland surmised that the vehicle he had just witnessed was likely involved in the shots fired incident. He quickly located the vehicle and conducted a traffic stop. During the traffic stop, Officer Copeland gained entry into the vehicle and subsequently located a firearm inside. To complicate matters, Officer Copeland soon discovered that this firearm was recently reported stolen. As a result of Officer Copeland's astute observational skills, 2 individuals were arrested. A stolen firearm was recovered without further incident. Will Officer Eric Copeland please come forward to receive your certificate of commendation? On October 12, 2018, Detective Michael Mack volunteered to work a string of burglaries to motor vehicles that had occurred hours before his shift began. Detective Mack, with the assistance of CID sergeants, was able to determine that a juvenile male who had been suspected of other car burglaries had been tracked by his court-ordered GPS ankle monitor as being in the area of these burglaries during the time frame in which they had occurred. Detective Mack worked quickly and was able to locate video surveillance footage and a stolen car that linked this specific juvenile to these burglaries. The juvenile was located and transported to the Springfield Police Department. Detective Mack conducted an interview of the suspect while his mother was present. The juvenile admitted to committing 13 car burglaries and gave the name of another suspect who was also arrested and charged for the crimes. If not for Detective Mack's commitment, quick work, excellent interview skills, these crimes would have gone unsolved. This is a true example of professionalism and dedication to hard work. Will Detective Michael Mack please come forward to accept your certificate of commendation? Detective Mack could not be here to receive his honor. On May 12, 2018, Springfield Police Department officers responded to a call of a home invasion of an elderly couple located in the 2500 block of South 4th Street. The elderly female victim was badly beaten. She had a laceration to her head, a cut to her hand, and extensive bruising. She reported she heard a knock at the door. When she answered it, a female said she needed help. Suddenly, two additional subjects forced their way into the home along with the female, who pushed the victim to the floor. The female victim reported that one of the male subjects began striking her with a handgun, causing her injuries. The three suspects rummaged through the house, taking items including a safe containing several handguns and also gold coins. The female victim was able to provide a partial vehicle description as the suspects fled the scene. Detectives Russell Ayer and April Smitty were assigned to investigate this incident, and they met with the victim, who was able to provide a possible name of the female who originally knocked on the door. She said it was someone who lived in the neighborhood and had come over in the past asking for money. Having limited information to go on, detectives began going to local pawn shops to inquire if anyone had tried to sell any of the victim's gold coins. At one point, a search warrant was obtained for the video surveillance equipment at a local pawn shop to corroborate information that was learned during their investigation. Eventually, a name was developed, and detectives later located this subject, who was denied direct involvement. However, this subject gave information which proved to be useful in the investigation, including the identity of one of the suspects. Additionally, detectives were told by this same cooperating subject that the female suspect had chosen the place for the robbery. Through additional interviews, search warrants, phone extractions, as well as monitoring jail phone calls, detectives were able to positively identify the three suspects who committed this horrific crime. Detectives Lair and Smitty interrogated the suspects and obtained confessions from two of them admitting to their involvement in the crime. All three suspects were charged with home invasion, residential burglary, aggravated battery, and portions of the stolen property were also recovered. Due to the persistence and diligence of these detectives, as well as their ability to cultivate information using various tactics, 3 dangerous criminals were taken off the street, and an entire neighborhood was able to breathe knowing that justice was served. Will Detectives Russell Ayer and April Smitty please come forward and accept your certificates of commendation? Congratulations, detectives. March 3rd, 2018, Officer John Von Baeren took it upon himself to conduct surveillance in the area, immediately surrounding the hometown pantry parking lot. The proactivity was a result of recent reports of drug transactions purportedly taking place. Shortly after surveillance began, Officer Van Baeren observed what appeared to be a drug deal that took place. A traffic stop was conducted on one of the vehicles involved in the transaction. As the encounter unfolded, Officer Van Baeren was able to gain verbal consent to search the vehicle, along with all passengers inside, in an effort to uncover the illegal drugs. Officer Van Baeren's suspicions were confirmed. During the search, he located approximately 42 grams of suspected heroin in the driver's purse. Officer Van Baeren did not stop at this point, but rather separated the occupants of the vehicle with the goal of interviewing each one individually for additional information regarding the suspected drugs. The driver, who also happened to be the owner of the purse, admitted that she knew the drugs were in the vehicle. Both suspects were arrested on scene and ultimately charged with drug-related crimes. This was all due to Officer Van Baeren's recognition of a problem, being proactive, and also being determined to bring an end to these types of drug transactions. Will Officer John Von Baeren please come forward to receive your certificate of commendation? October 17, 2018, Detective Justin Spade, who was assigned to the Springfield Police Department Street Crimes Unit, obtained a search warrant for a residence. This warrant was acquired after numerous hours of surveillance, and computer research was conducted by Detective Spade and the entire Street Crimes Unit. The Springfield Police Department's emergency response team was utilized to serve the search warrant because of the dangerous background of the individuals and the presence of firearms inside the home. The warrant was served without incident, and 3 individuals were later arrested. A search of the residence revealed that 2 loaded handguns, one which that had the serial number scratched off, ammunition for the guns, and over $1,000 in currency, and over 16 pounds of crystal methamphetamine with a street value of over $715,000. 2 of the arrestees were charged with methamphetamine delivery, methamphetamine possession, possession of a weapon by a felon. Both suspects were currently in the custody of the Sangamon County Jail awaiting trial. Due to the unwavering efforts of Detective Spade and the Street Crimes Unit, an enormous amount of drugs were removed from the city streets of Springfield. Will Detective Justin Spade please come forward and accept your certificate of commendation? Congratulations. May 23rd, 9:45 p.m., Officer Paul Carpenter responded to a residence in reference to an attempted burglary. The homeowner heard the doorbell but was unable to answer. Shortly after, the homeowner observed a suspect standing near a window, shining a light into the home. Fearful for her safety, the homeowner quickly exited the residence and ran to a neighbor's. It was at this time that the neighbor observed a white vehicle backing out of the victim's driveway. While the victim waited for the police to arrive, she observed the same white vehicle circling slowly throughout the neighborhood. When Officer Carpenter arrived on scene, he conducted a canvass around the residence, checking for any evidence left by the prowler. Officer Carpenter located shoe imprints directly below the window where the suspect was last seen. The city had been experiencing a rash of break-ins, and Officer Carpenter recognized that these prints matched the other ones from previous burglaries. While Officer Carpenter continued to gather information from the victim, the white vehicle was once again spotted in the neighborhood. Officer Carpenter took immediate action. He conducted a traffic stop on the vehicle and identifying the driver. Officer Carpenter was familiar with the driver from several previous encounters. Upon searching the vehicle, burglary tools as well as other stolen items were located. Finally, Officer Carpenter was able to match the shoe prints on the scene with the shoes that the suspect was currently wearing. Because of Officer Carpenter's observational skills, awareness, knowledge of the trends of criminal activity in the city, a multitude of burglary cases were solved. Will Officer Paul Carpenter please come forward to receive your certificate of commendation? On July 27, 2018, SPD officers reported to the area of State and Kennedy in reference to a burglary in progress. Officers quickly apprehended a juvenile male hiding in a trailer who was also in possession of burglary tools. The male was uncooperative and refused to identify himself or provide officers with an explanation of his actions. Officer Justinia, I apologize, Holt was assigned as a Springfield High School safety officer and was summoned to the scene and was able to identify the burglary suspect. As the entire encounter unfolded, Officer Holt was able to develop a rapport with the suspect and immediately transport him to the police station in order to be interviewed. This interview led to the juvenile suspect confessing his intent to steal a four-wheeler from a nearby trailer. While officers on scene were able to convince the juvenile to speak, it was Officer Holt's recognition of the juvenile and her ability to interact with him that led to the burglary confession. Well, Officer Justinia Holt, please come forward to receive your certificate of commendation. Congratulations. August 18th, 2018, Detective Michael Brown was assigned to a case involving a Porsche racing engine that had been stolen from a garage in the 3100 block of South Douglas Street. A Crime Stoppers tip provided potential suspect information about a recently stolen Porsche engine. Detective Brown worked quickly and uncovered information indicating that the stolen engine may be in a nearby town. He also verified background information on the suspect, linking him to the specific town, giving some credence to the new information. And after meeting with local law enforcement representatives, Detective Brown located the spot where the engine was supposed to be and conducted surveillance. Through Detective Brown's persistence and hard work, he was able to locate the suspect and obtain a confession for the burglary and theft. The suspect took Detective Brown to the spot in the Sangamon River where he dumped the engine. The engine was then recovered by a cooperating agency. The suspect advised Detective Brown of the identity of his partner who helped him steal the engine. The accomplice was also arrested and charged. Both men pled guilty and they were sentenced to jail time and over $58,000 in restitution to the victim. The stolen engine was recovered because of Detective Brown's hard work and quick actions. A valuable item such as this is not often recovered and returned to the owner in such a short time frame. This is a true example of professionalism, determination, and also dedication. Will Detective Michael Brown please come forward to accept your certificate of commendation? Detective Michael Brown. You're thinking, is there more? And there's more. This is good stuff. This is great. On June 12, 2018, Officer Dale Davis responded to an apartment complex to check on the welfare of a female. A family member had attempted numerous times to make contact with this female, but was unsuccessful. While Officer Davis knocked on the apartment door, he could hear a TV going in the background, along with what sounded like moaning for help. Officer Davis continued to yell for the female, at which time the TV volume was turned down so he could clearly hear moaning sounds and slow, gasping breaths. During this time, it was relayed to Officer Davis that the female had an extensive medical history. With this new information, Officer Davis feared the female may be suffering from a medical condition and made the decision to force the apartment door. Upon entering the apartment, Officer Davis located the female, who was now unresponsive and laying on the couch. Fortunately, medical personnel were on scene as well and immediately began life-saving care. The female was transported to a local hospital for further medical evaluation. Oftentimes, investigative techniques are used for incidents other than criminal behavior. This represents an example of what Officer Davis did in split seconds, that he decided, based upon the sounds coming from the inside of the apartment, and his actions assisted in saving a life. Will Officer Dale Davis please come forward to receive your certificate of commendation? Congratulations. The month of May is Mental Awareness Month, and we would like to recognize some of the officers who were called to assist individuals in crises. On any given day, stories that involve an interaction between law enforcement and a person that has mental illness are more common. With these type of calls, law enforcement is faced with one of the biggest challenges: how to resolve these incidents peacefully while in an unpredictable and sometimes volatile and violent environment. While a perfect resolution is not always possible, it is what the men and women of the SPD strive to achieve. As an agency, we are committed to ongoing training, so our officers at SPD know how to handle these extremely high-risk incidents while not compromising their own or the public safety. Thank you not only to the officers who are being recognized, but to all the men and women at the SPD and their continuous commitment in treating those in our community affected by mental illness with the dignity that they deserve. On October 29th, Officers Don Anderson and Jason Oliver responded to Westlake Drive at the I-55 overpass in reference to a suicidal female threatening to jump from the overpass onto the highway. As the officers arrived, they could see a female standing on the outside of the guardrail, hanging over the traffic below. The officers attempted to speak with the distraught female. However, she continuously referred to them to a message on her phone. Although the officers asked numerous times from the female, "Climb back over the railing," she refused. At one point, the female turned away from the officers to look down at the speeding traffic. Both officers took advantage of this distraction and made a split-second decision to rush in and grab the female before she was able to jump. The female was eventually brought to safety, and she was transported to a local hospital for further treatment. Once the scene was secure, officers were able to view the female's phone, which, in fact, contained a suicide note. Because of their heroic actions by Officer Anderson and Oliver, this distraught female was removed from a life-threatening situation and was provided professional assistance. Will Officer Don Anderson and Officer Jason Oliver please come forward to receive your certificate of commendation? December 27th, around 019 hours, Officer Zachary Boyle responded to the 1600 block of Westchester for a disturbance. Dispatch had received a 911 call from a female who was saying that to get someone there when the phone was disconnected. The female was able to call back with an address before the phone got disconnected a second time. Dispatch called the number back, and a male answered saying there was no problem. Officer Boyle arrived and observed a male subject walking outside in a blood-covered T-shirt. The suspect began walking away from Officer Boyle toward the apartment door. A female yelled to not let the subject back in the apartment, stated he would kill himself. The subject made it to the threshold of the door with Officer Boyle right behind him, and then he attempted to close the door on Officer Boyle. As the door was closing, Officer Boyle observed a knife on a nearby table. Fearing the subject was headed for the knife, Officer Boyle grabbed the subject while being struck by the door. Both parties fell backwards, with Officer Boyle landing on an overturned table, striking his head. The subject began punching Officer Boyle in the face in an attempt to get away and retrieve the knife. Although dazed from the fall and being struck in the face, Officer Boyle was able to secure the subject to keep him from retrieving the knife. Backup officers quickly arrived and the suspect was secured. Calls for service are generally unpredictable, and during this call, Officer Boyle encountered an obviously disturbed subject. Through his keen observation, quick thinking, Officer Boyle put himself in harm's way to prevent the subject from doing further harm to himself or anyone else. Will Officer Boyle please come forward to receive your certificate of commendation? Congratulations. March 24th, 2018. Officers Rudy Breida. Did I get that right? Awesome. Officer Rudy Breida and Cody Musson. 3 tries, I made it. I'm sorry, Cody. Cody Musson were sent to a residence to investigate a theft. Officers met with the victim, who directed them to a location where the suspect was staying. Officers located the suspect in an upstairs bedroom. The suspect was clearly agitated and began to pace back and forth towards the door while refusing to answer any questions. Then the suspect demanded to leave. However, the officers instructed him he would be detained pending further investigation. As the suspect made another attempt to step past the officers, they blocked his path. At this point, the subject turned directly to Officer Breida and struck him with both hands. This action freed the suspect's path, but Officer Musson, correct? Thank you. Officer Musson was able to grab a hold of him from behind. This time, the suspect struck Officer Musson, breaking free from his grip. As the struggle ensued, both officers were struck multiple times, and eventually, all 3 individuals fell down a flight of stairs. Unfortunately, this was not the end of the struggle, as the suspect continued to batter both officers. Eventually, the officers were able to tase the suspect, ending the massive confrontation. Both officers were treated at a local hospital for the injuries that they had sustained. The start of each shift brings with it the unknown. Neither Officer Breida nor Officer Musson knew that they would be placed in such a battle. Fortunately, both officers maintained composure and relied on their training to ultimately bring this encounter to a peaceful conclusion. Will Officer Rudy Breida and Officer Cody Musson please come forward to receive your certificate of commendation? In the early morning hours of September 11th, 2018, officers responded to a residence where it was reported that a male had expressed interest in killing himself. As officers arrived on scene, the individual who made these specific threats, he fled the area. Additionally, the male admitted to previous attempts of suicide and text messages, along with specific ways of carrying out his intentions. Utilizing available technology, dispatch was able to determine the location of the male's cell phone. Officer Jeff Larson responded to this area and located the male walking in the street with a large rope in his hand. Officer Larson was very familiar with the male and began to engage in dialogue with him. Not long after his arrival, Officer Larson was able to convince the male to seek help at a local hospital. Officer Larson then provided the male a ride to a local hospital where he received treatment. Because of Officer Larson's awareness of the issues in his beat, he was willing to listen and offer simple advice. This troubled male received much needed assistance. That being said, will Officer Jeff Larson please come forward to receive your certificate of commendation? Officer Larson is unable to receive his honor. In the early morning hours of July 10th, 2018, Officers Ben McGill and Butch Slater responded to the 500 block of Ridgely to investigate a report of a distraught female that had left her residence. While armed with a knife, officers located the female, who was in fact armed, behind a nearby apartment building. While several officers responded to the call, it was Officers McGill and Slater who began and continued to have a dialogue with the armed female. The incident was brought to a peaceful ending, with the female being taken into custody and sent to the hospital for treatment. This does not begin to tell the full story of the actions performed by both officers. This encounter with the distraught female lasted well over 30 minutes. Throughout this time, neither officer became irritated or showed signs of frustration, but they remained patient. They were sincere, they were empathetic, they displayed genuine concern for her well-being. The professionalism displayed by both officers provided this female with an opportunity to receive the help she truly needed. At this time, will both Officers Ben McGill and Officer Butch Slater please come forward to receive your certificate of commendation. Our next award is the Abraham Lincoln Award, which shall be awarded to any sworn officer who, through initiative, creates or participates in a program or system which significantly improves the quality of life in the community of Springfield, which exceeding the normal expectations of job performance. They went above and beyond. What began as a brainstorming session while seated in a barber chair quickly morphed into a large-scale school supply drive that ultimately provided numerous school items and haircuts for hundreds of children. While engaging with community children on a daily basis, Officer Lamar Moore quickly recognized his desire to help those who are less fortunate. Prior to the start of the 2018-19 school year, Officer Moore partnered with 2 local barbers in town that decided to provide free haircuts along with a backpack containing numerous school supplies to the children that were in need. As plans for this event began to broaden, Officer Moore and his partners elected to throw, I love this, a community party in which food and entertainment, to include Disney characters, would be provided. Officer Moore knew that this would be an opportunity to offer a positive impact on hundreds of school children and their families as they would see and interact with a police officer in an entirely different manner. Not only were thousands of school supplies donated, but the trio also raised funds totaling $1,000. Over 300 children benefited from Officer Moore's generosity, but more importantly, several hundred individuals were positively impacted by one man's desire to give back to those whom he serves. Officer Moore truly displayed his servant's heart, and he knows that this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to his future charitable ideas. At this time, will Officer Lamar Moore please come forward to receive the Abraham Lincoln Award. Congratulations. The next award is the William Herndon Award, which will be awarded to the plainclothes officer or officers on active duty performing the most distinguished act or acts of police work during the preceding year. The William Herndon Award. On September 7, 2018, SPD detectives Russ Lair, Michael Mazerum, Chuck Redpath, and Jason Sloman responded to the sleep-in in the 3700 block of Freedom Drive for what was originally thought to be a heroin overdose. Upon arrival, detectives observed that some of the room furnishings, along with other items, had been removed, and the male victim had what appeared to be ligature marks on his wrists. The initial investigation revealed that the room had been rented by two females. Detectives also found the victim had identification with his belongings. Through a recent missing persons report, detectives were able to confirm the victim's identity. The detectives then reviewed hours of video footage from the hotel surveillance cameras and discovered that there were two male suspects had come and gone from the victim's room multiple times. Each time these individuals would arrive and depart, they concealed their identity. Detectives tracked down the females that rented the hotel room, and while interviewing them, detectives uncovered several names of potential suspects. After numerous hours of surveillance, detectives were able to obtain a search warrant for vehicle trackers and cell phones. Through information gathered as a result of these warrants, they were able to positively identify a female who was directly involved in the homicide. As the investigation progressed, the detectives continued to comb through additional hours of video footage from nearby businesses, ultimately tracking down the movements of our four suspects that were involved. This led detectives to the home of one of the suspects, where a piece of physical evidence that belonged to the victim was located. This piece of evidence established an undeniable link between the victim as well to the suspects. Through the continual hard work and efforts of the four detectives, the four suspects were arrested on a charge of first-degree murder, and justice was finally obtained for the victim and his family. Will detectives Russ Lair, Michael Mazerum, Chuck Redpath, and Jason Sloman please come forward and receive your commendation. Congratulations. Our next award is the Silver Suarez Award, which will be awarded to the uniformed officer or officers on active duty performing the most distinguished act or acts of police work during the preceding year. There are 2 awards being presented. November 14th, 2018, officers were dispatched to the 400 block of South Lincoln for a check on the welfare of a 50-year-old dialysis patient who had missed his last 2 appointments. When officers arrived on scene, the knock at the door was met by a subject verbally answering. During this brief conversation, officers felt something was wrong because of the victim's speech patterns. As well, while speaking to the gentleman, officers heard the sound of something hitting the floor inside the apartment. Soon after the noise, the victim stopped communicating with the officers. Officers made a split-second decision determining that there is likely a medical emergency occurring and it was taking place and a citizen's life was in danger. Officers acted quickly and decisively by forcing entry into the apartment. It was at this time the victim was located and immediate medical assistance was requested. The officers' concerns were justified as the victim appeared to be in a respiratory arrest. Officer Ed Higginson began CPR. However, the victim progressed to a full respiratory and cardiac arrest. Officer Higginson continued CPR while other officers cleared the apartment, ruling out any other type of criminal activity. Springfield Fire Department personnel and paramedics relieved Officer Higginson and began advanced cardiac care. The victim was fully revived to the point of having a stable heartbeat and breathing on his own. Doctors at Memorial Medical Center credited Officer Higginson's decision to immediately begin CPR as being instrumental in the victim surviving with no long-term medical issues. It is evident that Officer Higginson went above and beyond the normal course of duty on this day, and as a citizen is alive as a result of these actions. At this time, will Officer Ed Higginson please come forward to receive the Silver Suarez Award. Congratulations. July 9th, around 9 p.m. in 2018, officers responded to an armed robbery at a local county market. The primary officer arrived on scene and provided a brief description of the suspect to include approximate age, height, weight, facial hair, and also clothing description. Officer Paul Carpenter, who happened to be patrolling another area of town, was able to connect this vague description to an individual with whom he has had many recent interactions. As well, Officer Carpenter knew the criminal history of this individual was matched the crime that he had just committed. Officer Carpenter conducted research which led to several potential addresses that this person of interest was known to frequent. Upon checking multiple addresses, Officer Carpenter met with residents who provided information as to the whereabouts of this individual. Meanwhile, Officer Ryan Montcalm independently began his own research on a potential suspect by comparing booking photos along surveillance footage from the armed robbery. Officer Montcalm also conducted the county market armed robbery suspect concluded that the county market armed robbery suspect matched the description of the person identified by Officer Carpenter. The now suspect of the armed robbery, identified both by Officer Carpenter and Officer Montcalm through different methods, he was detained and eventually positively identified by store personnel. He was subsequently arrested for this crime. Notwithstanding both officers being busy, handled calls specific to their beats for the evening, but it was their investigative prowess that ultimately led to removing this violent offender from the city streets. At this time, will Officers Paul Carpenter and Ryan Montcalm please come forward to receive the Silver Suarez Award. Before I invite the chief to come back to the podium, it was my distinct honor and privilege to be a part of the Springfield Police Department family and to celebrate and honor those who were recognized. And I just want to say personally, thank you. Thank you. Chief?
Thank you very much. In 2018, we focused on our most valuable asset, and that's our employees, our officers. With that said, we started a wellness program that takes into consideration one's physical, mental, spiritual, marital, and financial needs. As part of this vision, we established a physical fitness incentive and a peer support program, along with revitalizing our chaplain program. At this time, I want to personally thank Pastor Brewer, Pastor Johnson, Pastor Rosser, and Father Wells for their efforts over the past year. Can we get a round of applause for them, please? Additionally, we conducted a pilot program called Field Operations Officer of the Quarter, in which Officer Paul Carpenter and Officer Dale Davis, please stand, were recognized for their efforts. The program was designed to recognize those officers who are role models, who go above and beyond and do outstanding work on a daily basis. Award winners are selected by their supervisors and their peers. This award will became permanent January 1st of this year and will culminate with our first Field Operations Officer of the Year award at the next award ceremony. With that said, would Officer Ryan Binkley please step forward to receive the Officer of the Quarter for the first quarter of 2019. As we look forward to 2019 and what lies ahead, we can't forget those who paved the way for us and came before us. With that said, I would like to take a moment to recognize all the former chiefs of police in the audience. At this time, Chiefs, Chief Walton, Chief Robinson, Chief Davis, would you please stand? I now ask that all retired members of the Springfield Police Department please stand to be recognized for your service to our community. At this time, I would like to call forward the following 2018 retirees to receive their retirement shadow boxes: Sergeant Lon Crook and Officer Scott Rosenberger. As we close here today, I would like to thank all those who made this event possible. Specifically, the Springfield Police Department Internal Awards Committee, the Executive Awards Committee, Hope Church, including Pastor Brian Mills and their staff for the use of their facility and assistance in making this event possible, Addie Maddox, who did a phenomenal job on the national anthem, Julie Frederick and the city's audio-visual personnel for their assistance with video and photos today, and our MC, Todd Brewer. But last but not least, I have to thank Deputy Chief Kenny Scarlett, Alex Rockford, Lisa Davis, Holly Schmetke, and Heather Bosey for their tireless effort and the long hours they put in on working on the annual report, as well as the logistics of organizing this event. Today is not about just the award winners. It's about all the officers who dedicated themselves to our profession, to our department, and to our community. With that said, please be safe and thank you for your service. At this time, I'd like to call Father Wells up for the benediction.
I assured Pastor Brewer that I pared this down to my usual half-hour prayer, so just kind of hang with me, please. Let us pray. O God, our Creator, whose mighty power and eternal wisdom embraces the universe, watch over these officers who have been honored by the Springfield Police Department here today. Protect them and all the officers of the department as they perform their duties on behalf of this community in stopping crime and violence. We pray that you assist them as they work to keep our city safe, both night and day. We commend them to your protection and loving care because their duties are frequently dangerous. Grant them your unending strength and courage in their daily assignments, and at the end of each watch, unite them safely with their families. I would like to close by praying over you the Aaronic blessing, which is found in the Old Testament in the book of Numbers. It was given by God to Moses and used to bless the Israeli people. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift his countenance upon you and grant you peace. And I ask that God's blessing be upon you now and forever. Amen.